Good morning and good afternoon, depending on what time zone you're joining us from. Thank you for tuning in to this webinar of the Ceres Investor Water Hub. This is part of our monthly speaker series, and this month we're focusing on how investors integrate water into strategic and practical decision-making. We're featuring guest speakers today who are both members of the Investor Water Hub from Seamans Capital Management and Terra Alpha Investments. My name is Robin Miller, and I'm a manager at Ceres focused on supporting investor engagement on our water program. I will be moderating this session and will introduce our speakers in a moment, but I also want to give a note of thanks to my colleagues Hugh Brown, Monica Freeman, and Emma Conover, who are providing support behind the scenes. Before we dive into the content, I'd like to provide a few logistical notes. For this webinar, everyone is in listen-only mode, and all lines except for our speakers are automatically muted. If you'd like to ask a question or have a comment, please type a question in at any point in the chat box on the bottom left, or you can raise your hand and my colleague Emma will get back to you. We will pause after each presentation for a brief question and answer period, so please submit your questions often. This webinar is being recorded, and we'll send a link to the recording out to all participants, and we'll also post this video to the Ceres Investor Water Toolkit page so you can listen back in and also share with your networks. If you run into any technical issues, you can reach out to the numbers on this slide, and I'll also add them to the chat box. As I mentioned in the beginning, this webinar is put on by the Ceres Investor Water Hub as our educational speaker series, which seeks to highlight key learnings from academia, science, and for this webinar in specific, investors themselves. For those of you who aren't familiar, the Ceres Investor Water Hub is a working group of the Ceres Investor Network. We have over 100 institutional investors representing more than $20 trillion in assets under management as part of this group. We are advised by leading investors and other peer networks as shown on this slide. Last year, the Investor Water Hub released the Investor Water Toolkit, which is available both online and in PDF form as a comprehensive resource on evaluating water risks in investment portfolios. I highly encourage you to take a look and interact with the data, the case studies, the risk frameworks, and so much more in the toolkit online. And certainly, please be in touch with the Investor Water Hub team at Ceres to learn more. The Ceres Investor Water Hub is led by a mighty team at Ceres, directed by Monica Freeman and supported by my colleague Hugh Brown and myself. We currently have two small working groups for Hub members, one focused on the materiality of physical water risks and the other on portfolio water footprinting. Please let us know if you'd like some more information about either of these groups. So moving into the content for this speaker series, we're bringing it back to a classic style we have of having Investor Water Hub members themselves share their best practices and key strategies for integrating water risks and opportunities into their decision making. We have a stellar panel of speakers from Terra Alpha Investments and Seamans Capital Management that you can see on this slide. So as a quick reminder, you can type your questions into the chat box on the bottom left throughout the presentations, and we'll raise those during our Q&A. Now, to start things off, you'll hear from Rita Morency and Julia Tarantino from Terra Alpha Investments. By way of introduction, Rita is a research analyst and is responsible for fundamental and environmental productivity research within the materials and utilities sectors. Rita also served as the lead author of Terra Alpha's report called Navigating Rough Waters, Businesses and Investors Must Adapt for a Water-Stressed Future, which you'll learn much more about in their presentation. Julia is a communications associate and is responsible for preparing external publications and communications related to Terra Alpha's advocacy and business development programs. Julia and Rita, you can take it from here.
Hello, everyone. I'm Rita Morency, and I'm a research analyst here at Terra Alpha. I cover materials and utilities, and I was the lead author on Navigating Rough Waters. I'll be presenting to you today on Terra Alpha's investment strategy, which includes the traditional fundamental approach to analysis, as well as our own branded environmental productivity analysis. I'll explain a bit more about what environmental productivity is, and really focus on water as one of the key data points we look at when we research a company's sustainability. I will also give you a couple of company examples pertaining to water that we've come across in our research. So we are an investment manager that incorporates material environmental data in our assessment of fundamentally sustainable business models. We invest in publicly traded equities around the world. The firm was founded in 2014 by highly experienced investors who believe that a portfolio of environmentally efficient and fundamentally sustainable companies will deliver superior risk-adjusted returns in an economy faced with growing natural resource constraints. Our environmental productivity analysis allows us to identify leaders across all sectors and geographies and equips us with a differentiated perspective critical to our investment success. The simplest way to describe our investment process is with this multi-level funnel. We start with all global publicly traded companies, and we use company-disclosed key environmental data as an inclusionary screen to create our disclosure universe. This key data includes emissions, water, and materials. The basis for the inclusionary screening is, if you measure it, you will manage it. Basically, companies that are measuring and disclosing this environmental data are more likely to be better managing it and preparing for a future with limited resources. So what it really comes down to is that companies that are managing these resources will see a positive impact on their bottom lines. We then determine the most environmentally productive companies in the disclosure universe. We gauge companies against their peers in sector-specific analysis to create what we call our environmentally productive investment universe. Our next step in the process includes traditional fundamental research, as well as research on the environmental productivity of each company. We are really assessing how sustainable the business model is on a fundamental basis. We do so by analyzing growth, margin, and profitability trends, the robustness of the balance sheet, and cash flow generation and use. We assess management team and board track records and strategies for growth. In addition to reviewing corporate governance policies and social factors, we conduct a deeper environmental productivity analysis of the company. We verify the data we are using, check the robustness of environmental targets, and assess how the company plans on achieving those targets. We identify whether the company is forward-thinking in how it operates, enabling in terms of its products or services allowing others to operate more efficiently, or pioneering in terms of disrupting its industry to succeed in a changing world. Our investment team then checks the valuations, and we arrive at a portfolio of the most environmentally productive, fundamentally sound, publicly traded equities. Environmental productivity measures the efficiency with which companies use and impact natural resources. For businesses operating in the 21st century, managing resource challenges and constraints is imperative. When we talk about environmental productivity, we are focusing on three main factors: carbon, materials, and water. We also consider soil and forest data, though the data on these is much less comprehensive. So when thinking about carbon efficiency, we're looking at ways in which physical constraints, reputational risks, and increased regulations will impact business operations. Our thesis regarding this is that forward-thinking companies are reducing emissions, improving efficiency, and utilizing renewable energy sources to be better equipped at navigating the changing landscape. We also look at material efficiency, because global material use has been growing exponentially, and patterns of consumption point to an increasingly resource-constrained world. Companies that are resource efficient and forward-thinking are better positioned for long-term resiliency and success. Additionally, we consider companies' water efficiency. As you all know, global water resources are becoming more stressed, which can pose serious financial risks to companies. By 2030, there is projected to be a 40% gap between global water supplies and demand. Companies that are measuring their water use and impact can reduce vulnerabilities and outperform their competitors. Investors who incorporate water and natural resource impacts into their investment analysis and portfolio creation process can reduce risks and improve returns. We incorporate water impacts into our analysis by assessing a few main factors, including whether or not a company discloses water data, whether or not it has set a target for reducing its water use, including distinguishing between context-based targets, net zero targets, or general targets, and if it has completed a water risk assessment, and if it has disclosed the findings of its water risk assessment. We published our report, Navigating Rough Waters, to inform businesses and investors about the reality, risks, and opportunities of water stresses, because we feel that water is material to both parties, but is often overlooked. In the report, we provide a global backdrop on the state of water as a resource, highlighting how, although global water crises are a huge threat facing the planet, water stresses are an extremely localized issue, which leads to company-specific risks and opportunities. We lay out the different types of risks that companies may face, which generally manifest as physical, reputational, or regulatory. We provide company examples in the report on each type of risk. One example is in 2011, higher than average rainfall aligned with other factors to cause Thailand's worst floods in 50 years. Toyota felt the effects of the floods on their earnings. The floods caused it to close its Thai plants, and the shortages of parts slowed manufacturing around the world. Toyota reported an 18.5% net income drop, a 4.8% decline in revenue, and a 32.4% fall of operating profit. Toyota's stock was down 22% in the following the negative earnings report. We also discussed how businesses and investors can capitalize on managing water, and again provide specific examples for operational, strategic, and market opportunities. For example, SAB Miller undertook a water risk assessment of their facilities in 2010 worldwide, and then implemented actions to reduce water use, helping them to realize cost savings of $300 million over 5 years. Most importantly, we have a section on recommended actions and tools that investors can use to analyze company-specific environmental performance and assess their exposure to water risks. As I mentioned earlier, a vital component of our ability to assess a company's water risk is disclosure of its water data. When companies measure their water footprints and disclose this information, both companies and investors benefit. Companies can benchmark against their peers while providing material information to investors. Investors can make informed decisions that maximize returns by incorporating water risks and opportunities into their valuation methods. Water data is commonly found through a few channels, either a company's own public reports, so the annual report or sustainability report, and third-party data repositories such as TrueCost, CDP, and GRI, amongst others. Ceres, as you all likely know, has a great investor toolkit that walks investors through the steps of beginning to look at water as material information, from understanding water risks to portfolio analysis, sharing engagement opportunities, and providing case studies which will allow a range of investors to relate. This is a great resource for those who understand the materiality of water and are looking to incorporate it into their strategic decision making. Another good resource are CDP water surveys, particularly for the in-depth water risk assessment details. These are just a few highlights, but there are many more tools for investors as well as company examples in our full report, which is available for free on our website, terraalphainvestments.com. So here are just a few additional examples that we have come across in our research where water has impacted or has the potential to impact business performance. PG&E, the California electric utility, has been in the news a lot recently related to the California fires. PG&E spends hundreds of millions of dollars every year in fire prevention, including pruning or removing trees, and continues to claim that its programs met the high standards for safety. It has been found liable for several fires in California starting back in October 2017. While the company stated that it met regulatory requirements, even these requirements did not protect PG&E from the changing climate and extreme drought. And just for full transparency, we owned PG&E until mid-October of 2017, when we decided that the risk profile had changed dramatically. So it's clear that climate change has led to more and more areas with extreme lack of water, which is clearly having an impact on companies, and PG&E is a prime example. The company just recently declared bankruptcy, and since October 2017, the stock has fallen as much as 91%. On the other hand, companies can also be impacted by too much water. Munich Re suffered a 38% decline in quarterly profits in 2010 after receiving claims worth more than $350 million due to severe flooding that closed 75% of coal mines in Australia. Diageo is a British multinational alcoholic beverages company and the second largest distiller in the world. It has experienced production disruptions due to lack of water in Brazil, Ghana, Kenya, India, and Seychelles. The company has stated that 35% of its sites are located in water-stressed areas, and it expects this number to increase over the next 3 to 5 years. Disruption at a site costs £20 million a week in lost revenue, or nearly $26 million. It has been implementing aggressive water efficiency programs, wastewater recovery and reuse targets, and water replenishment targets. It now has a net zero target, which is to fully replenish the amount of water used in final products in water-stressed areas, and to return 100% of wastewater from its operations to the environment safely. On a related note, for the beverage industry as a whole, it used to take 12 liters of water to prepare 1 liter of drinkable beverage in 2008, and now it is down to 2.2 liters of water per liter of drinkable beverage. And Xylem is a large American water technology provider. It is what we would classify as a forward thinker and an enabler. One of its plants has reduced water consumption by 30% year over year with the installation of 2 reversible heat pumps connected to 3 hardening machines. This project alone will drive a 20% company-wide reduction in water savings by 2019. Its solutions that reach across the whole life cycle of water are extensive and enable its customers to reduce their water footprints as well as its own. Impressively, 90% of Xylem sales can be allocated to environmental innovations. So overall, investors need to understand the growing impact of our changing world on companies in their portfolio.
Hi, I'm Julia Tarantino. I'm a communications associate at Terra Alpha Investments. Today, I will briefly discuss how Terra Alpha has worked to engage with our portfolio holdings to measure and manage their environmental productivity or resource use efficiency, primarily in the areas of emissions, water, and waste. I'll also discuss how the firm has advocated for change in our economic systems that is in greater alignment with natural resources through a range of efforts, including our ideal disclosure framework, external partnerships, and through our communication strategy. Our engagement work is focused around the adage, if you measure it, you will manage it. So when corporations ask what they should be disclosing, we direct them to our ideal corporate environmental data disclosure table. The ideal disclosure table serves as a framework for environmental data disclosure from an investor's perspective, focusing on timing, range of information, and the depth and breadth of release data. It also points out what Terra Alpha uses as a current base expectation for our holdings, which is that companies publicly disclose their corporate water usage, emissions, and waste stream data. And it highlights what we consider best-in-class ideal disclosure. In 2018, we directly wrote to every company in our portfolio that was not adequately disclosing their water and waste usage in a targeted letter and analyst follow-up campaign. Using our environmental productivity rating system to identify specific requests, we sent out 40 letters to companies. In response to this engagement effort, a little over 70% responded with detailed answers about targets and data, relaying that increased disclosure was coming soon, especially around water, as well as new science-based target setting. 10% also announced that they would be disclosing in 3 categories of emissions, water, and waste by the end of the summer. This framework can also be adopted by investors looking to integrate environmental data into their investment strategy. For example, Voya Financial's Office of Corporate Responsibility utilizes our ideal disclosure document as a benchmarking tool, an internal training tool, and as a proof point for the disclosure business case. They find it helpful in raising the bar for their performance and disclosure and have shared aspects of it with senior leadership, investor relations staff, and their internal investment professionals. Our corporate engagement requires that our investment research analysts lead our interactions with companies using our ideal disclosure guidelines as the first step in their engagement work, eventually drilling down on specific points laid out in our environmental productivity scoring system. This is both more efficient for us and effective in driving impact with that company. The template can also be found on our website under our Reports tab. In addition to our ideal disclosure framework, we partner with organizations for ideas, research, and to amplify our campaign for environmental productivity. Some of the organizations that we have worked with include World Resource Institute, the Nature Conservancy, EDF, WWF, and 1% for the Planet. We're also signatories to CDP, SASB, and PRI. Beyond our direct work engaging with portfolio companies, we seek opportunities to make the case for improved environmental productivity practices and corporate environmental disclosure practices through our communications work, which encompasses a variety of efforts, including speaking at lectures and on webinars such as this one, sending out quarterly newsletters, monthly environmental productivity examples, and by leveraging social media such as LinkedIn and Twitter. We also publish our environmental productivity reports, which Rita pointed out earlier. We have reports on carbon, water, and waste streams, and our report on forests will be published early 2019. Shareholder engagement and advocating for greater environmental productivity are essential components of our work at Terra Alpha. Through these efforts, we hope to demonstrate that environmental productivity is a material factor in mitigating risk and reaping value for both investors and businesses over the long term.
And just to finish up, with the increasing disclosure of environmental data, there has been an increase in the standardization of data reporting. And this means that there are more opportunities to identify companies better equipped to succeed in our changing world. Our investment funds, driven by environmental productivity, have generated superior financial returns versus the MSCI world since our launch in May of 2015. On top of our superior financial returns, our funds are also much more environmentally productive than the general investment universe. They are 90% less carbon intensive, 73% less water intensive, and 93% less raw material intensive. Thank you.
Thank you both. We'll now turn to some Q&A, but really appreciate that comprehensive presentation and also the nod to the Ceres Investor Water Toolkit. Thank you both. We did have a few questions that came in. One touches on a point made right at the end. Though there is an increase in the standardization, there's still not a full standardization of ESG data. So how do you deal with this lack of standardization in the ESG data by companies?
So this is something we've been navigating over the years, and it's definitely gotten better, as I said, with an increase in standardization. But mostly our work is we verify data across multiple platforms, and as Julia said, we engage with companies to get as accurate of data as we can. So we're looking at multiple data sources to confirm that the data we use is accurate.
Great. And then another question that came in was just asking what are the key points to make to investors for the case of active investing in the water space versus just using a passive form or investing in an index or an ETF?
Well, most of the investors that we are talking to are already interested in active investing versus passive. But I also think that it's just important to get ahead of the changing climate.
Great. Yeah, and I guess speaking on that one final question, and then we'll move to the next presentation. I'm just wondering what the interaction, you said you have a lot of clients coming to you already asking about this, but what's the interaction with your clients specifically around water? Is this something they're asking about, or is it something that you have to present to them?
It's definitely something they ask about, but as I said, we don't just focus purely on water, so our investors or potential investors are really interested in our whole approach that covers the full environmental productivity scope.
Okay, great. That's super helpful. And we have one final question come in. Which of the water risk assessment tools have you found to be the most useful out of the ones that you've mentioned?
We use the CDP water risk surveys very often when we're assessing companies, and we've also used the WRI Aqueduct tool frequently.
Great. That's super helpful. And for folks who might also be wondering what other tools are out there, we list quite a few of them in the Investor Water Toolkit. And if you hear of more, we're always looking to add to that because we know that there's a lot of innovation in that space. Great. So thank you again, Julia and Rita. We'll have you still on the line if any questions come in throughout at the end. But now I'll turn the floor over to Dr. Sunny Huang and Bill Brady of Seamans Capital Management. I'll give a quick introduction. Dr. Huang is a portfolio manager responsible for asset allocation and research for the energy, agriculture, and commodities sectors. She brings a global macroeconomic perspective along with fluency in Mandarin to her role at Seamans Capital Management, and she has authored and co-authored 6 papers in peer-reviewed journals. Bill Brady is the Managing Director of Private Equity at Seamans Capital Management, and he focuses on the strategic growth of the firm's private company holdings. He works closely with the management team at Aquion, a private water remediation company that you'll hear more about in the presentation to guide the company through its rapid growth phase. So we're delighted to have Sunny and Bill present, and I will turn the floor over to you.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you very much for this opportunity to share our perspective on the importance of water. I would like to start by introducing the evolution of Seamans Capital Management and our involvement in water technologies. Seamans Capital Management started as a research firm in 1986, specializing in offering strategic advisory on currencies and commodity prices in the market. The company evolved in 2002 into an investment firm focusing on critical resources and commodities, co-investing with mining entrepreneurs who had been purchasing our research in the past. This is when we learned how important it is to match local environmental needs, especially water, with our investment objective. Environmental impacts and cultural variables are part of our due diligence on the mining companies. In 2013, we shifted our investment focus to clean energy as we evolved into a hybrid family office. At this time, we started making water investments. Since 2013, we have been investing in public and private companies that provide solutions to address water risks. Over the time, we have expanded our investment areas to include essential technology and essential service. These investments support basic human needs and social stability as climate change intensifies. With the declining technology costs, we are finding more and more investments that provide both positive impact and financial returns. We integrate both financial disciplines and SDG in our investment research and analysis. We started off by making sure our investments fit into SDG goals, and then we moved to top-down, bottom-up investment analysis. Currently, our portfolio holdings are concentrated on 8 of the 17 SDGs. Some of them will be highlighted later in this presentation. We believe access to clean water is a basic human right. Water is at the center of a sustainable world and is critical for socioeconomic development, healthy ecosystems, and for human survival. It is one of our key investment sectors. We included a slide here to share with you the investment metrics as part of our due diligence, which provides the context for today's case study. The first metric is market. We look for disruptive impact technology that comes with timely competitive advantage and market catalysts, and can be applied in multiple sectors and geographies. One company developed a great technology we invested in the past, but there was no market catalyst until a state passed air control regulation. The second metric is product and service. To mitigate technology risk, the technology needs to be proven, proprietary, and patented, as well as being simple and scalable. We would like to see that technology has 5 to 10-fold cost advantage, which can drive rapid adoption and open new potential market. The third metric is management team. Management team is the key to any company's success. We would like to see the management team members have a strong track record in creating shareholder value and are co-investing with the firm. We also want to see the company well-positioned to generate cash flow within 18 to 24 months and have a clearly defined exit plan. In our experience, it inevitably takes more time than the founder assumed, and there's always a risk of a more competitive technology. We believe the impact metrics have to fit in. We're still trying to improve our impact measurement systems. The first 3 case studies here are related to water risks in the mining industry. Water is used in all steps of the mining process. When we were investing in mining sector, our due diligence process includes water supply, waste treatment, management practices for increasing water use efficiency and reducing environmental impacts. For example, in Peru, we had to walk away from a mining company. This company planned to develop a massive mining deposit. However, the company needed to relocate 3 glaciers around the mining site that would disturb the integrity of the glaciers in the region and lead to potential water shortage to the local community. In a second example, this mining company was involved in a project close to Salmon River in Alaska. We declined to invest because this project could potentially lead to pollution of the river. In the third example, the mining company tried to develop a mine in Mexico but lacked local water supply. Then after the issue was resolved, we invested in the company. Now I would like to share with you 3 case studies on water solution companies. The first company is a water rights company. The business model is not simple or scalable, as the local regulations can be complicated and vary state by state. And selling water to the highest bidder to generate a profit may be at the expense of public interest. The second company provides energy recovery solutions for reverse osmosis desalination plants. The company's product lines significantly improve energy efficiency of RO desalination. However, the management team were not able to manage prices or costs to generate a profit. A second red flag was the company was still not profitable despite of a high market share. The third company is Aqueon, which will be shortly discussed. The company's technology is simple, scalable, and can address water risks in 6 applications. We invested in this company, but we needed to work with the founders to create a new CEO role. Now I would like to introduce Bill Brady, our Managing Director of Private Equity and interim CEO of Aqueon, to share with you the Aqueon case study in greater details.
Thanks, Sunny. We're delighted to present Aqueon as a case study because of its potential to drive substantial improvements in our planet's most valuable resources. Acreon uses magnetic fields and oxygen to solve issues across multiple sectors. Issues of water scarcity in the agriculture industry, water pollution and air pollution in livestock farms and food producers, oxygen for fish farming, clean drinking water using desalination and reverse osmosis, and water cleanup in municipal and other ponds. A photo of an Acreon EMO product is in the bottom left of the slide. This is a water solutions company for agriculture, aquaculture, dairy and livestock farms, and water cleanup. Acreon satisfied our due diligence requirements because its proprietary technology is disruptive and has been proven with successful installations across industries. The company is scalable with products that are simple to produce and easy to install. Applications for the technology span multiple sectors. Products offer substantial benefits for the planet, which is crucial to us as an impact fund. The addressable target market is more than $16 billion. Competitive products are less effective at 4 to 8 times the price. Actually, companies that we saw as competitors are now coming to us to partner, which is nice to see. Management is backed by our firm's leadership. In fact, I'm scaling the company as CEO, working side by side with the company's founder and president. The company is on track to reach cash flow positive this year, and we see multiple liquidity events for investors. The company's core technology is called EMO, which stands for electron, magnetic, oxygen, hydrogen. And these are the core components of the technology. In the figure in the center of the slide, water enters the EMO unit on the left, moves upward to a strong magnetic field in stage 1, where groups of H2O molecules called water clusters are broken down into smaller size. This small water cluster water then moves across the top of the unit to a venturi, where atmospheric air is infused into the water. In this process, oxygen is retained in the water in the form of nanobubbles. This highly oxygenated water then moves downward into a second magnetic field in stage 3. Typically, oxygen bubbles in water rise to the surface and eventually exit the water into the atmosphere. But this magnetic field breaks down the water clusters further and creates an equilibrium between the nanobubbles of oxygen and the small cluster water, an equilibrium that holds the oxygen in the water. The end result is a highly oxygenated water in the form of small water clusters, water that solves issues across many industries. The company's first target market is agriculture, where we're addressing water scarcity. Water scarcity is a leading issue for the agriculture industry. Growers are consuming large quantities of valuable water, and fertilizers are depleting the soil, impacting crop yields. Acreon's technology reduces the water required to grow crops. Treated water penetrates soil 48% quicker than conventional water, and this reduces water loss from evaporation by up to 15%. Additional benefits include increases in crop yields as smaller water clusters are more efficiently absorbed by the crops. Eliminates irrigation line clogging. The EMO process generates trace levels of hydrogen peroxide in the treated water that maintains the lines free from clogging. And with added microbials, the technology remediates soil abuse by overuse and by fertilizers. The second market is addressing water pollution at livestock farms and food producers. This is a widespread issue as 45,000 U.S. livestock farms have polluted ponds and are discharging polluted water. Farmers are being sued for unsafe water discharge. Food producers are also being sued and fined for discharging polluted water. In fact, a large mushroom grower was recently fined $67 million for unsafe discharge. Acreon's EMO technology treats polluted ponds, bringing the water into compliance with state water regulations, And an additional benefit is EMO-treated gray water is safe for growing agricultural feed crops. This technology reduces the cost of producing clean drinking water from desalination and reverse osmosis. Reverse osmosis units require significant energy to operate, and they consume porous membranes that are expensive to replace, up to $1.5 million. Aqueon's technology reduces the electricity required to operate these RO systems. Specifically, Aqueon's smaller water clusters pass through the RO membranes at a lower pressure, resulting in energy cost savings of up to 30%. As a result, the lower pressure also increases the lifespan of these expensive porous membranes. These lower operating costs means RO becomes a more viable drinking water solution worldwide. This technology also solves air pollution issues. Currently, polluted ponds at livestock farms and food producers generate methane, which we know is a toxic greenhouse gas. And California recently legislated a requirement to reduce methane from these ponds. Aqueon's EMO technology eliminates pond methane generation by increasing the oxygen content of the water to a level that does not generate methane. An additional benefit is that noxious odors are eliminated, which also reduces the risk of lawsuits. The impact is only sustainable if the company is financially viable. Toward the bottom of this slide are projected financials that show strong growth potential with healthy margins and cash generation. As an impact fund, the benefit beyond financial is essential for our investment. Aqueon addresses several SDGs, including hunger, clean water, climate change, and water life. Addressing zero hunger, Aqueon regenerates soil with microbials, increases crop yields, and lowers fish farm operating costs. Addressing clean water and sanitation, Aqueon reduces the amount of water required to grow crops. Nitrates, sulfates, and phosphates are brought into state regulatory compliance. In desalination, reverse osmosis costs are reduced. Addressing climate action, methane from dairy and other livestock farm ponds is eliminated. Noxious odors from these ponds are also eliminated. In addressing life below water, EMO technology oxygenates water for fish farms. Hydrogen peroxide generated in the process combats bacteria in the water, and it abates highly concentrated fish farm biowaste. Our goal with Aqueon is cleaner water, cleaner air, and more abundant food and drinking water. For anyone attending the World Ag Expo in California next week, we'll be exhibiting. So come visit us. We'll have a demo of the technology, and you can also meet the company founder, Ted Batkin. Now I'd like to turn it back over to Robin.
Thank you, Bill, and thank you, Sunny. We'll now open up to questions. But first, thank you for such a great presentation, sharing the overall strategy at Seamans Capital Management, giving some specific case studies, and then sharing a bit more about Aqueon. So some specific questions for Sunny. One is just thinking back about mining operations, just wondering, how do you get the data on whether there's a water shortage or not for a specific mining operation? Where do you go to look for that information?
Sure. Given how closely we worked with and invested with mining entrepreneurs and their team who were on site, on the mining site frequently, we had a continuous flow of the information that included water availability locally, as well as some other information like power consumption, etc. Okay.
Great. And then a question for Bill, just wondering how much the EMO process takes groundwater into consideration. Yeah, if you could comment on that.
Sure. Actually, what we do is for the agriculture industry, we use the groundwater and treat it when they're growing the crops. And as a result, the water penetrates the soil much quicker, and as a result, we decrease the evaporation. And in that process, we're able to use less of the groundwater. So we're able to decrease the consumption in the process.
Great, thanks. And this is a question for Sunny. You mentioned focusing on the Sustainable Development Goals and a few in specific. I'm just wondering if you could further elaborate on the alignment with Sustainable Development Goals.
Sure. So currently, our portfolio holdings are concentrated on 8 of the 17 SDGs. They are SDG 2, Zero Hunger, SDG 6, Clean Water and Sanitation, SDG 7, Affordable and Clean Energy, SDG 8, Decent Work and Economic Growth, SDG 9, Industry, Innovation, Infrastructure, SDG 11, Sustainable Cities and Communities, SDG 13, Climate Action, and SDG 14, Life Below Water. We feel that SDG goals are really an interconnected network of targets. For example, it takes lots of energy to produce, treat water. So SDG 6 and 7 are closely related to each other. And some of our portfolio holdings target multiple SDG goals.
Great, thanks, Sunny. So now opening this up to all of our speakers. This question is coming for Sunny, as well as Rita and Julia from Terra Alpha. Some of us, saying that water is a highly regulated resource, and wondering in your assessments, do you define the need for or the benefit from policy support in emerging markets to reduce exposure to water risks, and then on the flip side also enhance investment? Let me know if I know that was a long question. I can repeat it if you.
Hi, this is Julia from Terra Alpha. So we put the onus on the company to use best-in-class practices as it pertains to the local basins. So while we aren't necessarily banking on policy support, we will look at local regulations in water-stressed areas. And ultimately, lack of policies could lead to a non-investment decision for us.
Great. Well, again, a thank you to our speakers for sharing their insights. I feel like we were able to see two very different perspectives on this webinar, with Terra Alpha presenting this very detailed approach, and I really appreciated you sharing exactly the metrics that you're looking for. And I guess a follow-up to that, I'm wondering, what's the kind of the high levels that we can leave folks with? What's the high level motivation for Terra Alpha on pursuing this water strategy?
Our goal is to drive systemic change in our economy because we believe that the investment world should be more aligned with our natural systems, and water is a part of that. And we just believe that investors need to be paying attention to all environmental data as it's material.
Great, thanks. And I guess same question for Sunny and Bill. If you could just summarize, again for our participants, what's really the driving force behind Seamans Capital looking at water in your investment decisions?
So for us, we believe, as I actually mentioned in one of the slides, access to clean water is really a basic human right. And water is really at the center of the sustainability development. And actually, currently, we are finding more and more water investments that actually can contribute both financial returns and really good environmental impact.
Great. That's a wonderful note to start wrapping up on. So again, thank you to our speakers. I hope that you all can join us for our next speaker series, which will be a month from today, looking at a really interesting study of Dutch investors on how water plays a role in their decision making. So we will send on registration details in the follow-up. And we also are, in a reaction to the mining failure about 2 weeks ago in Brazil, we are organizing a webinar to take place at the end of February, bringing in some experts from the Columbia Water Center and the Church of England and a few other groups to share just some perspectives on that failure, on the systemic risks that often come up in the mining sector, and how we can move forward on this. So again, I'll send out details for both of those events in the follow-up. And if you are interested in sharing a topic or you're interested in presenting on a future webinar, please do reach out to me. We're always looking for great topics and new voices to highlight, so please do get in touch. And another exciting piece to wrap up on is that Ceres is celebrating its 30th anniversary. And we have two great large events to share. One is with our conference coming up at the end of April in San Francisco. You can view registration details and see the latest agenda at ceresconference.org. And the other exciting pieces that we are doing a 30th anniversary gala later this year in New York. We'll be sending out more details coming soon, but hope that you can join us for one of those events or both. So as we wrap up, you can reach out to any of our Hub team members, Monica, Hugh, and myself. Our email contact is there. And I encourage you, again, as I did in the beginning, check out the Investor Water Toolkit. It's a great resource. Many of our investors used this toolkit and contributed to the development of the toolkit. So on that note, thank you for your time and attention. Please do follow up with us. I will be circulating the recording and the slides and a few links to you all shortly after this. So thank you, and have a great rest of your day.